Hello and welcome back to Leader Up, a podcast of Army Management Staff College. Leader Up is a professional conversation where we discuss a broad range of leadership and leader development topics with an emphasis on the Army civilian professional. I'm your host, David Howey. On today's episode of Leader Up, we have a very interesting and a very special guest. Our guest today is Dr. James Helis, and he is the director of the Army Resilience Directorate, and he is also a member of the Senior Executive Service. And we're going to talk today about the Army Resilience Directorate and some other leadership and leader development topics. And so, Leader Up audience, let me bring our guest in. Dr. Helis, thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for being on Leader Up.
David, it's a privilege to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start, Dr. Helis, with just a big picture look at your organization, the Army Resilience Directorate. What is it, and what are some of the major programs that are in the Army Resilience Directorate?
Good question. We're a team of about 85 individuals, about 80% civilian, the remainder military. Our portfolio consists of the Army's Sexual Harassment and Assault Response and Prevention Program, the Army Suicide Prevention Program, the Substance Abuse Prevention Program, and the Promotion of Individual Resilience. Those are the major components of the portfolio. Other programs that we have within the organization are the Army's Sponsorship Program and the Army's Body Composition Program, and a few other health promotion activities.
And so if I'm an Army civilian out here in the field, how will the Army Resilience Directorate affect my job, and what kind of things would I be focusing on in order to take advantage of the things that you offer in the Army Resilience Directorate?
Great question. The first thing we are is a resource and a compendium of resources for leaders across the Army. If you go to our webpage, which is Army Resilience, all is one word, .army.mil, you'll find a variety of resources that discuss what are the Army's policies, in general about resilience and about prevention, but also specific to the different programs. We have a variety of resources. We conduct podcasts and webinars on a regular basis on topics from substance abuse to sexual harassment to how do you build individual resilience, how do you build a positive climate, and then links to all kinds of resources for commanders. So that is the first we do. The second in there that you'd find by coming to us is us being able to lay out the resources that are available locally at installation for civilian leaders to tap into to both build positive climates in their teams and support and take care of their team members, and how to prevent, or in the event of there is an event, how they can respond and support their team through a through some kind of a difficult event.
And so you've talked a little bit about prevention, and I'd like you to address, if you can, how supervisors can establish a climate and a culture of prevention regarding these topics.
Yeah, great. You make a great point in the question that the first step in prevention is building a positive climate and a culture within the organization to build a cohesive team where everybody values everybody else. Everybody is treated with dignity and respect, with empathy, and when challenges and issues arise, that the team is there and the leaders are there to support them. I would say for leaders, the first thing is to articulate that. Tell everybody that you expect it. That this is a team, rather than do what too often we do in the Army, which is lay down a bunch of do nots and what will happen to you if you cross the line. It's to lay down positively what you expect of folks in terms of their day-to-day interactions. Here are the standards I have. Here's what I expect. Here's how I expect to see everybody treat each other. I expect leaders to take care of their teammates. I have an open door if there's a problem or a challenge, that somebody has to bring it to me, because we're here about taking care of each other so that we can be able to accomplish the mission. So that's the positive side of building it. And then on the negative side, if there is something that is said, if there's a comment, if there's a remark, if there's something done that crosses the boundary of the norms, you've got to correct it immediately. Don't wait 2 or 3 days. Don't ponder it. Just make a quick on-the-spot correction of, hey, we don't use that kind of language here in the team. It's clearly, role modeling the behaviors you expect and making corrections when they come up.
And then resilience. I
Mhm.
thought it was noteworthy that the word resilience is in the name of your organization. And so what role does resilience play in this idea of prevention?
What resilience does, everybody goes through challenges in life. They can be relationship challenges, they can be financial challenges, they can be, challenges with the health of a family member. They can be professional challenges. What we're intending to do with resilience and developing resilience is to provide everybody the skills, the coping skills that they need so that they can get through those challenges in life, that they're better equipped to deal with them when they come up, to be able to plan, to be able to set goals, to be able to maintain a positive attitude so that you can work your way through those problems. It's not just about, what often people say it's about bouncing back or getting up after you're knocked down. I would say it's more than that. It is giving the skills so that you can push through a challenge so you don't get knocked down. And, the intent there is, if you've got the coping skills to deal with the challenge, then you're less likely to turn to unhealthy alternatives, to substance abuse, to suicidality, to just being to acting out in the workplace because you've got all of these problems inside of you. So again, building resilience so people are healthier and better prepared to deal with the challenges of life, so they don't fall into harmful behaviors.
And your organization is going to realign from the G1 to the G9. And I'm just curious, what is the rationale behind that, and how will that transition affect the Army Resilience Directorate's ability to do its job?
Great question, Dave. The decision to realign the Resilience Directorate from the G1 into the G9 at Headquarters DA is part of a series of decisions made by Secretary Wormuth to enable the Army to better execute prevention, to better get ahead of harmful behaviors, to get upstream of them. So the first in these decisions is the formal designation of a principal staff lead, 3-star general, who will be the lead for prevention within the Army. And that decision was to go with the G9. The G9 already owns quality of life. The G9 already owns soldier family programs. Those are critical in upstream prevention, primary prevention of harmful behaviors. And it made sense to roll the programs associated with those behaviors together into the G9 so that there's better synchronization and coordination between our efforts, because a number of the programs that they run are supportive of our programs and kind of vice versa. It allows for, perhaps better more efficient use of resources. And it allows for, better identification of, are there gaps and seams in our prevention program. So again, this is part of a larger effort by the Army to better go after prevention. Within the Resilience Directorate, for most folks, it's not going to have a significant change in what we do. The face we present to the Army will still be the Army Resilience Directorate. But it will enable us to more closely coordinate with both those the folks in G9 and their programs that support prevention. So with the designation of the G9 as the lead, to better synchronize all of our efforts, with the chaplaincy, the Surgeon General, provost marshal general, all have significant prevention activities within their offices. And again, the designation of a lead and the consolidation in the G9 is going to make it easier to coordinate and synchronize those prevention programs across the Army.
I'd like to switch gears with you a little bit and talk about Army civilians, and just how have you seen the role of Army civilians change during your time working with the Army, and how do you see the role of the Army civilian in the Army today?
I think the role of the Army civilian is even becoming more critical in the face of the recruiting challenges the Army is facing. There's no secret that we're having a more difficult time recruiting for the uniformed force. The civilian force is the continuity. It's the institutional knowledge within the Army. And I think we're going to have to pick up more responsibilities as we cope with a smaller active duty component. So we'll see more responsibilities, I think, coming our way in the future. And it's going to be critical that we stay connected with the force, that we stay part of the force, and we understand our role, that we are, vital. There again, the three components of guard, reserve, and active, but there's also the civilian component that's in my mind is equally important now, particularly for the institutional Army.
Absolutely, and that kind of leads me into my next question, which is about leadership and leader development in the Army civilian profession, and why is that important more so now than maybe it was even 10 years ago, 15, 20, or even 30 years ago? How is leadership and leader development important for us as Army civilians?
The Army has historically always had a very robust program for leader development within the officer corps. We then came to a recognition pretty much post-World War II, and again, a resurgence post-Vietnam era of the importance of leadership development for the enlisted soldiers, for our non-commissioned officer corps. And then again, subsequent to that, we seem to have come to the recognition of we need to have a formal structured leader development program for our Army civilians. Leadership is taught, leadership is learned. And we need to invest in the development of leaders within the civilian corps. Most folks, starting out in the Army civilian corps, start off in some technical position. And as they develop experience, they develop expertise, it's time to move them up into leadership positions. And we owe it to them, and we owe it to the Army to provide them the leadership development they need so they can step into those positions. Part of it is technical of, how do you do civilian evaluations? What are your responsibilities in terms of, equal opportunity in the workplace as a hiring manager once you become a leader? But it's also in the just how do you provide leadership? How do you lead people? And again, that is learned, that is taught. And again, I think the Army's made a good move particularly in the last 10 years, of expanding leadership development opportunities for civilians. And I would encourage all of our civilians to take advantage of the formal leadership opportunities that are afforded you through the Army.
Thank you. And on behalf of everybody here at AMSC, I certainly do appreciate that endorsement. It's very refreshing to have senior leaders endorse the things that we do here at Army Management Staff College regarding leader development. I'd like to ask you about two topics, and I used to hear about these a lot in the classroom from intermediate course students who are GS 10, 11s, and 12s, and they wanted to talk about this a lot, and they know that it's important, but they're frustrated with it. And the two topics are delegation and feedback. And so let's start with delegation. Why is delegation important, and how does someone know when they are delegating effectively?
that, delegation is one of those key leadership skills, and it's really one that's taught. Nobody is born knowing how to delegate. I would, stand up in front of the classroom and tell the students, okay, you can't do it all. Once you have moved up to a leadership position, your job is more inspiring, supporting, encouraging the people whom you are leading. And again, you can't do it all. If the Army intended for you to do it all, you wouldn't be leading a team of, again, for the intermediate course, 4 or 5, 6, 10 people, whatever it is. You're there to lead them, which means delegating down to them. And a critical piece of delegation, you'll learn you're effectively delegating, I think, when the organization is meeting all of its requirements. You are, processing the hiring actions or the pay actions or the contracts or the maintenance requirements, whatever your requirements are. When you're hitting the mark with all of those, and everybody is working, that when you look around your workplace, you see that everybody is actively employed. You don't have people sitting around waiting for work or looking for work, that everybody is contributing to the team. That's when you know you've effectively delegated down to the team. I would say a lesson in delegation for new leaders is, get out of the way and let people do their jobs. Remember when you were before you were a leader, how much you just wish people would, kind of let me do my job. Be that kind of leader who's going to allow people to do the job. Make sure they know what the expectations are. Make sure they get them the resources. Take your experience and share your experience with them and teach them so they can be the next you and become an expert in that job, and support them as they go. Delegation can be scary because, you go. I would tell intermediate, to upcoming leaders, let your subordinates have latitude to do the job. Let them get to the outcome. That's what you're looking for, is the result. So they may not do things exactly the way you would have done or exactly the way you would have done it in a situation, but are they getting to the outcomes you want? That's an effective organization, and they'll be happier and more productive if you let them, explore and figure out new ways to do things. But delegation absolutely critical, because you can't do it all yourself.
And the second topic that we talk about a lot in the classroom is feedback. And so why is feedback important, and what does it look like when it's done well?
Feedback, if I look at feedback from through a couple of different lenses. One is, how do you as a leader provide feedback to the members of your team? And you should, always look at it as, you need to provide feedback when they're doing a good job. You don't want to constant. It's not always, here's how to do better, here's how you miss something, but you want to recognize when people are doing a good job and doing well. That's both through individual counseling that you're doing regularly as part of the appraisal process. It can be done publicly, just in a meeting, saying good job on that project. But there's also, the whole host of recognition awards, where we have now a family of awards from, achievement, commendation, meritorious service, all the way up to distinguished service for civilians. We're very generous with those with soldiers. We should be equally generous, I think, with those with civilians. And so if you're a leader, put your civilians in for awards when they do a good job. So that's part of the feedback process. And when you're providing the feedback, make it positive in terms of, here's how I think you could do things better. Here's opportunities I think that you have for some professional growth, or here's some things I'd recommend you do, or course I recommend you take, so that you can, be promoted and move on to higher levels of responsibility. Other feedback is when you're getting feedback from your boss. And that's one where you need to be in a listening mode. And apply that as you go down and to provide feedback to subordinates. Listen, to where your boss is telling that you can improve. None of us walk into a new job knowing everything, how to do it. So listen to your boss and figure out, okay, how can I improve and do better in my job? Third part of feedback that we often don't talk about with leaders is getting feedback from your team members. Okay. When they come up and say, hey, here's something I see in the organization that could be done better, or here's something where I'd like you to help me out better, or I think you could do to help me better do my job. Phrase I learned from my current boss: listen to learn. Don't be in the mode of listening to wait to respond, but listen to what's coming from them. And you will achieve great results and gain respect from your team members if you take their good ideas and implement them, or if you can't, to take the time to explain to them why you can't. Is there a legal or regulatory prohibition on doing that? Is there a resourcing issue where I can't do it this year, but we're going to put it in the budget, and request funding for it next year? But again, look at your feedback coming from all directions.
And I'd like to switch gears once again and talk about
Mm-hmm.
the senior executive service, of which you are a member. And I want to start with the symbol that represents the senior executive service. What is the significance of that symbol, and what does it mean for you?
It's the keystone, and to me, that is not just about the senior executive service, but it's about our civilian employees across the government. That we're the keystone to things happening. You pull the keystone, and the arch, the structure will fall. So that's what it's about. It's about our contribution as civilians in the military and in other departments of the government, of how we are contributing to the nation and how we are serving the nation. And if you pull that keystone out of civilian service, a lot of things start to fall down. What we do matters.
And so what kind of advice would you have for those of us who are members of the Army Civilian Corps who aspire to be a member of the senior executive service? What kind of things should we be doing? What kind of considerations should we have? And what advice do you have for people who are considering that?
I thoroughly enjoy being a senior executive. I will say that. Is it challenging? Is it demanding? Of course, but all leadership positions are. But I find it extremely rewarding to work with the team that I have and the outstanding professionals who are working for me, in this organization. For those who wish to aspire to being a member of the senior executive service, I would first tell folks, don't sell yourself short. Okay. Every one of us who is an SES started out, somewhere lower in the hierarchy of the system. And none of us, when we walked into our first assignment as an SES, were fully, totally prepared for it. There is, as with every job, some on-the-job learning. So don't look at other SESs and sell yourself short and say, well, I'm not as good as this person. Maybe not today, but you can get there. I would say as you should take advantage of all of the former leadership training opportunities that you can within the Army. Get those tiered courses, working your way up. Because again, the key within senior executive service, I think, is delivering leadership. I think a second thing I would advise people is get out of your comfort zone. If you have an opportunity for a broadening assignment to move to another area, potentially even another career field, I think that would be beneficial to you coming up as a future SES, because we're supposed to provide that executive level, broader perspective to the leadership and management of the Army and within the government. So get out of your comfort zone and learn and develop different skills. And as a specific, I would say go to the OPM, Office of Personnel Management's website on the senior executive service and look at the executive core qualifications. That's what we are expected to do as senior leaders, to lead change, to lead people, to have business acumen, to understand how government and our agencies operate, to be results oriented. Go read those, and that's what you're looking for, and to work on building those kinds of skill sets and those kind of mindsets if you're aspiring to become a member of the SES. And don't be afraid to reach out to an SES that you know to ask for mentorship. It's one thing that we all are charged with formally through OPM is you need to be looking for the next generation of senior executives. Who are the people who are going to come up and be the next you? So if there's an SES that you admire or look up to, not even in your organization, I would encourage you to reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking about, aspiring to the SES. What tips can you give, and build that relationship?
And so in our final moments here, I would like to talk about what we call our Leader Up top threes.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is your top three, if you can give me three, or if you can give me only three, leadership books that you would recommend for leaders in the Army or outside of the Army.
Yeah, I would say, for leaders, read. Reading is important. There's a lot of learning you get from reading. We learn from experience, but you can learn from other people's experience by reading. And that can be both positive and negative, of here are things that work and here are things that, oops, I don't want to go down that path. This was a tough question, to name only three. I'm going to name four. I would say first, Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. It's about Abraham Lincoln's leadership in the Civil War, bringing together a contentious team of people who didn't necessarily like each other going into the team and had competing agendas within the government, and how he brought them together and got them functioning as a team to win the Civil War and save the nation. A second I would give is Thinking in Time by Richard Neustadt and Ernest May. It's kind of a classic about how you use the lessons of history in our jobs. We often think about, say, 5 years ago we did something this way. And Thinking in Time gives you a way of, how to use history and use the lessons of the past, but don't fall into traps. Make sure that, that you're, doing an apples to apples comparison and an analogy, and how to successfully use lessons from the past and history, and also traps you can fall into. And it's a great book because it's a lot of case studies, starting with the Cuban Missile Crisis, about how to get things right in some places where we where we didn't get things right. The third and fourth are books about Ernest Shackleton, great leader, best known for his getting through his cross Antarctic expedition that went sideways, and how he led his team through that and got everybody back alive from just an absolutely harrowing experience. Two books, they're both called The Endurance, which is the name of his ship. One by Caroline Alexander, the other by Alfred Lansing. They're both equally good. So I would encourage that about Shackleton, about the personal character of what makes a strong leader. So that'll be my three books: Team of Rivals, Thinking in Time, and either version of The Endurance.
And that story about Shackleton, that certainly is a story about resilience, I would say. Would you agree with that?
It is absolutely a story about resilience. It is also absolutely riveting. Even though if you've read the history or know anything, that that it's going to end up with a good ending, but you're just going page to page wondering, how do they get out of this? How does he get them through this? And his individual leadership, and keeping that cohesive team together through just unbelievable trials in the Antarctic.
And the second top three are your top three, and we're going to call these skills or competencies for Army leaders.
I would say, and this is not necessarily in any order, because I think you need all three of them. I would say communication, your ability to communicate to the team, your expectations, what the requirements are, your ability to communicate up, to explain to your bosses, and to advocate for your team with your bosses. The part of communicating that we don't often talk about is the receiving element, the listening. listening to your teammates to learn from them. They've got, a lot of good ideas. They will often come up with better solutions than you would ever dream of. So listen to your teammates and encourage them to share their thoughts, their ideas, their innovations, and listening to your boss. Really understanding what's your boss's vision, what's the intent, and what are ways that you can improve as a professional. So communicating, and I would say put listening at the top. I would say empathy. Take care of your people. By the time we get into leadership positions, we've learned technical competence in our field, but we're now responsible not just for an outcome, but for taking care of our people. And with empathy, to listen, to hear, to understand their challenges, and to help them through their challenges, because that's going to help them to accomplish the mission. And third, I would say is self-control. You're going to face challenges as a leader. You're going to have things go wrong. You're going to face crises. And it's critical that you maintain your control in the face of a crisis. Your team members are looking to you for leadership. And if you stay cool, calm, and collected, that's reassuring to them, encouraging them to work the problem. But again, that's self-control. Don't be the person who's doing the screaming and yelling. I think we've all unfortunately had that experience. Self-control. Hold it in, and again, keep your team focused on working the problem and working through whatever challenge they have at hand.
And our final set of top threes is your top 3 leadership lessons learned.
I would say own your own and your team's mistakes is first. You're going to make mistakes as a leader. Okay, just accept that. You're going to make mistakes, and even inaction can be a mistake. Not making a decision, not taking an action, that can be a mistake. So own your own mistakes, and don't be afraid to own your own mistakes in front of your team members. Let them know that you recognize your own fallibilities. And own your team's mistakes. Okay, you got to have their back. You've got to provide them that top cover. Okay, so own the mistakes of the team. Loyalty runs both ways. Be loyal to them. Number 2, and this one can be very difficult also, is own your boss's decisions. And that can be particularly difficult if it's known that you've been advocating for a different decision, in the decision-making process. But you've got to own your boss's decisions like they're your own, because you're responsible for execution, you're responsible for implementation, and you've got to lead your team through that implementation. So own your boss's decisions as your own. Telling people, hey, we got to do this because the boss told me. Okay, that only takes you so far. You've got to own it yourself. Third one, don't make work your life. Take care of your family. Have a hobby or hobbies, have outside interests. Nobody ever finishes, retires at the end of a career and says, gee, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. Gee, I wish I'd gone to more meetings. I don't like the term work-life balance because there's an implication that there's work and then there's your life. Work is a part of your life, a very important part of your life. You're going to spend a lot of time there, but you need to have more to your life than just your job. So again, tend to your family, take care of your family, take care of yourself, have a hobby, have an outlet. It will make you a better person. It will make you a happier person. You'll be more resilient, and you'll be a better leader for your team members if you have a life outside of work, if you're a complete person.
And so, Dr. James Helis, Director of the Army Resilience Directorate, I want to thank you for being with us today on Leader Up. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and to all of the Army civilian leaders. You matter. The Army could not function without you. So stick with it and take care of your people and press on with the mission. Again, thanks for having me today.
And so, Leader Up audience, what did you hear from Dr. Helis today that caught your ear, that you're more interested in? What books do you read? What kind of things do you think are important for leaders? And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube page and join us again next time for another edition of Leader Up.
As always, if you have any questions or feedback or would like to learn more about our podcast, please check the description for our email and for our website. Thanks for listening.